Good afternoon and a warm welcome to all the dignitaries, seniors, my dear colleagues, and juniors. Albert Einstein once said, intellectual learning begins at birth and ends with death. Keeping this up, we conduct CPC every month in this prestigious institute. It is indeed a privilege to welcome you all to this 12th CPC by the Department of Respiratory Medicine. With this, I welcome the dignitaries onto the dais. Dr. Puneet Saxena, sir, Senior Professor, Head of Department, Head of Unit and Convener CPC. Dr. Monica Jain, ma'am, Additional Principal and Co-Convener CPC. Dr. Mahendra Kumar Bainara, sir, who is Senior Professor and Head of Department, Respiratory Medicine. Now, as we start customary, I invite Dr. Puneet Saxena, sir, to present the SOP of the CPC.
Good afternoon, everybody, and we welcome you all for another edition of CPC. And we have been doing it successfully, and this is 10th CPC. So this is 10th CPC in the row, and today it will be presented by the Department of Chest and TB. And basically, this is the academic activity which engulfs all the faculties of the college and the hospital. And every time we have been struggling with the same thing repeatedly with the attendance and the interest of the people. So it's not for the department who is presenting, it is for the rest of the people. They can get benefit out of it. So, and being working at a tertiary care center, I can see so many senior people sitting over. They have to ensure the presence of their departments, especially the residents and the young faculties. So we can be more wiser working at a tertiary care hospital, even if it does not touch our stream. But we should be knowing what other departments are doing and what the multifaceted cases can be. So each department comes with a lot of preparation, basically. So protocol, we all know about the CPC. The first 15 minutes are dedicated to know about the progress of the department and followed by the case presentation. And we request every department to select a case which invokes interest of majority of the people. So it should be multi-systemic case preferably, and it should involve at least radiology and pathology department and other clinical departments, so that we can have a better insight and a complete insight into the case. And these cases are basically recorded, and they will be published on the website of the college, and it's an academic parameter of the college, basically, because other colleges and institutes, they dissect the academic. When they dissect the academics of any institution, what they will see the free papers and free papers and publications, and the research products and the projects and the CPCs which are being conducted by the college. So we request that the attendance, and I can see so many people, Dr. Pankaj Sharma is there, Dr. Radna is there. So whosoever has come and presented the CPC, they know how interesting it is, and they are present. That shows itself that how interesting it can be. So with that, I hand over here, and we were awaiting our principal to be here, but he was busy in the cath lab, so he'll be joining us soon. And next CPC will be taken up by Department of Cardiology. I don't think anybody from cardiology is over here. But we have informed Dr. Vijay Pathak, and soon the principal sir will be here, so I think he will also inform that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. So it's basically a message that we all have to make the CPC successful by attending it. Now I invite Dr. Mahendra Kumar Bainara, sir, to give a brief about his department.
First of all, I give thanks and welcome to all of you. Before going to start, that I'll familiar with you. I introduce myself first, and thanks to Dr. Puneet Saxena Sahab and Monica Madam as ADP. Actually, I have know this many faces here, but a very new person for me. And this is my first time, and I did MBBS from here, and selected in 86 and I re-selected in 87. So after that, I completed my MD from Udaipur in Respiratory Medicine Department. Then, I belong to Jaipur. So I'll be after my MD and the assistant professor, associate professor, senior professor. I will be working in the Jodhpur, Udaipur, and I came here in 2023 January, and this is the period of the 1.5 years we developed the our department as a so many the newer interventional pulmonology department. So today the case will be detailed by the our team, and for detailed introduction of this our institution, I invite Dr. Ambika. Please continue.
Thank you very much, sir. And it is always a matter of pride to introduce the department in which you are working. And I thank sir for giving me this opportunity. So, our department is about 85 years old, and telling all the details about the department in 10-15 minutes will be probably not possible, and injustice also to what we want to share with you. I will try to concisely finish it in 10-15 minutes. So department is older than the independence of our country, and it was established in year 1938 as King John V Sanatorium. With the SMS Medical College, when it was ready, it was included in as a department of chest and TB in 1952. In June 2011, the name of the department was changed as Institute of Respiratory Diseases. So I cannot see slides on my screen. Okay. So since inception, we are a renowned center for TB diagnosis and management, which everybody knows. And in 1990, a separate respiratory disease wing was constructed for non-tuberculosis respiratory patients. Okay. Okay. Since 1995 to 2012, there was more expansion of the department in the form of cottage and cubicle wards, dharamshala, OT, central oxygen and central sections were started in this time. In 2003, respiratory ICU was made, and in 2016, high dependency unit was constructed for the seriously ill patients. So we have got a new 50-bedded prefabricated ward with modern infrastructure and equipment, and it was started in year 2022. Another 100-bedded prefabricated ward with OT, lobby, etc. is nearly ready to start for the patient care soon. We also received a sanction of new respiratory department, new respiratory tower by government of Rajasthan in year 2023. So this is the prefabricated ward which has been started in 2022. So this is a list of head of department year-wise. In 1953, Dr. D.R. Nagpal sir was the first head of department and the medical superintendent also. Dr. Mahendra Kumar Binara sir is presently leading the department as head of the department. So this is the list of medical superintendent. Dr. Chand Bhandari ma'am is presently the working medical superintendent. So our institute is 306 bedded, and we have ICU beds of 7. We have 12 beds in HDU, and as I mentioned, we have prefabricated ward ready 50, and about to get ready is 100 beds. We have separate male and female ward as a regional nodal center for drug-resistant TB patients, and we also have cottage and cubicles. So these are some numbers of patients visiting OPD and IPD IPD of our hospital. Let's see the table from down. In 2022, about 8,226 patients visited to our OPD. The number increased in 2023 to 1,24,765, and in 2024 till 16 September we have already got 93,000 patients in our OPD department. If we see the IPD data in 2022, 11,359 patients were admitted. In 23, it was 7,929, and this year by the 16th of September, 5,807 patients were admitted in our hospital. We do have patients from another state, like all the states, as all the department from the SMS get to see all the neighboring states like Punjab, Haryana, UP, Bihar, Delhi. We get to see patients from there, and this year the number has already touched 345. And we have 4 units functioning in our department. So this is a present faculty list who all are presently working. We have 3 senior professors, 5 associate professors, 4 assistant professors, 4 medical officers who are specialists, and 9 senior resident at the moment. So about the post-graduation course, so diploma in tuberculosis and chest disease was started in year 1966 and MD in chest and TB was started in 1974. Now it is called MD in respiratory medicine, and at the moment we have 19 PG students who get admission in our department, and total number of students including 3 years are 57 PG students, which is the highest number in India. Coming to the key achievements of the department, we started fiber optic bronchoscopy in 1978 to our best knowledge, first time in North India. Thoracoscopy was started in 2013. Virtual navigational bronchoscopy in 2023, first in Jaipur and second in Rajasthan for peripheral lung lesions. Linear EBUS, radial ultrasound, and again radial EBUS was second in Rajasthan. We also have a very advanced lung function test which is called force oscillometry test, and again we are the first government medical college in Rajasthan to have this. So we do see lots of tuberculosis patients, active TB sequelae and complications of tuberculosis, but we get about 60% of patients who are suffering from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, asthma, pneumonia, interstitial lung disease, lung cancer, obstructive sleep apnea, allergic rhinitis, fluid diseases, and we do encounter uncommon and rare diseases frequently. So we have an advanced pulmonary lab which have pulmonary function test, diffusion capacity, sleep studies done, allergy testing, arterial blood gas analysis, and force oscillometry technique. These are the minor procedures which are done day in and out: thoracentesis, chest tube insertion, pleural biopsy, FNAC and biopsies. And in interventional pulmonary, as I mentioned, we've been doing bronchoscopy, thoracoscopy since long. We have a C-arm for diagnosis of peripheral lung disease, for diagnosis of lung biopsies under guidance of fluoroscopy. So these are the advanced interventional pulmonary procedures which we have started last couple of years, and I want introduce her to brief it about these later. Maybe sir, we can do it. Okay, so the details of interventional procedures done at IRB. I'm going with a little bit of numbers also what we do. So in 2021 we did 5,662 minor OP procedures. That means fluorocentesis, pleural biopsy, chest tube insertion, and FNAC of lymph node. The number increased to 6,670 in 2022. In 2023, we have done 7,329 these procedures, and this year by mid of the September 5,655. Looking at the bronchoscopy data, we did 462 bronchoscopy in 2021. The number increased to 601 in 2022. And 23, 789, and this year we have already crossed 736 cases. Number of thoracoscopy of 14 in 2021, 260 in 2023 we have 115 thoracoscopy procedures done, and this year we have completed 62 cases till date. And endobronchial ultrasound, which was introduced in our department in 2023, then we did about 28, and this year we have done about 62. So chest tube insertion, this year we have done about 1,166 chest tube insertion. We also do closed pleural biopsy. The number is around 99. This year we have done 1,653 pleural fluorosynthesis. Navigational bronchoscopy, we have done 15, again a new technology which actually sir will be highlighting about it. And a cryobiopsy, 7 cases have been done till date. So we have a chest ultrasound facility also, and the students get to learn how to do that. And we are running the specialty clinic, lung cancer, smoking cessation, and MDR clinic. This is a picture from our respiratory ICU. We have about 20 non-invasive ventilators, 7 invasive ventilators. High flow laser cannulas are 4, EBG machines are 2. We have all beds with nebulizers. So coming to the research and publication, our first research work to our best record what we found was published in the Index Journal in 1973, and since then many national and international publications we are doing. If I would like to say roughly around 80 publications last 5 years have been done from the department. So yes, we are very active on the national international platform for organizing conferences. The list is very big. I would like to highlight about two, three which were recently done. Under the guidance of Dr. Mahendra Kumar Benara sir and Judy sir, he was the organizing secretary and organizing chairperson for the two conferences which happened in 2023, the ICON, which is a very famous conference for allergy, and another is Bronchopulmonary World Congress, which was organized in the joint with W4C, and it was all done in 2023. So these are the achievements of faculty. Sir has written a book on medical thoracoscopy, semi-rigid and rigid, a practical guide, and this was the first book from the Rajasthan which was written on medical thoracoscopy and which was useful for many of the students. I also got the opportunity to be co-author with Sir in writing the book chapters on respiratory emergencies and pregnancy and on the management of ILD in ICU. Dr. Shukla Jagman has written a book, A Digest of Common Pulmonary Disease, a very handy book for the PG students, which is very useful for the exam. And then we have many chapters written by many of the faculties. So, Sir has written many fellowships, which includes fellowship in National College of Chest Physician and Royal College of Chest. Okay, I can do it quickly. So, faculty achievements, the Dr. Shamba Karinam received 2 years back Dr. S.M. Gaur Oration Award, and many of the faculty have received the fellowship in United Academy of Pulmonary Medicine, and Sir has been a deputy editor-in-chief for a journal which is called United Academy of Pulmonary Medicine, and he's also the editorial board member for other journals. Sir has contributed in the guideline making of medical thoracoscopy and nebulization, and many of our faculties are the reviewer for respiratory journal at the national and international level. So these are the prestigious awards which our students have brought to us. The list is again very, very big, and this is just the last 1 or 2 years detail which I'm able to put here. TESCON 24, Dr. Rahman, Dr. O.B. Raj, ICON 24, Dr. Agan, Dr. Vishwadeep, BWC 23, Dr. Rashid, TESCON, Dr. O.B. Raj again, and the list is very big, and it always makes us pride that in any conference our students are going, they are getting a prize for the institution. So these are the number of DL selection last 3-4 years which our students has got, and we are very happy that one of our students got All India rank of first, and some of them have been selected in AIMS. So not only the national platform, it is our international platform also that one of our resident, Dr. Vinita Anuwalia, was granted with all expense-paid trip to attend chest conference at the USA because she was the topper of the chest challenge organized by American College of Chest Physicians. So these are some department activity. We celebrate all days, more asthma day and COPD days. Now for the future vision, I would like to invite Dr. Mahendra Kumar Benara, sir, head of the department, to speak about future.
So I'll take 2-3 minutes for about this department. What we are thinking that what our respiratory medicine go to do. Next, please. So there is expansion of respiratory medicine department, infrastructure, academics. So for that, within 1 year, we have decided to go for the 100 dependent or prefabricated award. I thank to the principal and our SMS faculties who are making trust in us. And then there is like the western part of the style of the building there, and multi-disciplinary departmental approach for the diagnosis of ILD and some complicated cases. In the development of advanced interventional pulmonology department, please. So I have started in I started the first thoracoscopy in Rajasthan in 2011 in Jaipur, and then came to this expanding everything. So then we developed all the endobronchial ultrasound for the mediastinal adenopathy and some peripheral nodes, some incidental finding of the SPN, and therefore that we have offered the navigational bronchoscopy and the radial levers and everything we have. If anything is found in the SPN or peripheral lung nodule of the more than 10 mm, then we have facility to diagnose that with the help of the ultra-thin bronchoscope, and then we go to localize under the CM, and then we confirm the radial levers are reconfirmed by the CM, and we taking sample with the help of the biopsy as well as the 1.1 cryobiopsy, which is very latest technique in the world which we have. So I thank to again SMS Medical College principal who have faith in our department for developing these interventional cardiology department. And then next target we have toward the rigid bronchoscopy for the central airway obstruction, benign and malignant conditions, because we are seeing a lot of the patient is coming in the late stage, and we can do some therapeutic work also, and stenting also. This will be good. This is our next step. For that, we are eagerly waiting for the anesthesia machine, which has been already all boxes has done. So we are waiting for that this thing. And then one of the most important thing is the robotic bronchoscopy system, and this is costing 5.5 crores. And the cone beam CT and 3D flow system, which is very high technique, which is nothing is costing around 78 crore. But we are, since the largest institution in the North India, SMS Medical College, that's why we have this future hope for our betterment of our people. And another thing which I've been in China, for the bronchoscopic transparenchymal nodal exit, this is the technique which machine is costing 5.5 CR, but having a lot of things, the diagnostic, localization, radiotherapy, and that's the seeding of the radioactive substance to the node. So this is very good. We are thinking for that. Thank you very much for the patience here.
Thank you so much, sir, for the exemplary presentation. Now, without much ado, we will present to you the interesting case for today of a 40-year-old female presenting with chronic persistent dry cough and progressive shortness of breath. I invite Dr. Rajshri Somani, earlier postgraduate student, to present the case.
Department with dry cough since 4 years, dyspnea since the last 2 years. Asymptomatic till 4 years back when she developed dry cough. It was insidious in onset, persistent, progressive in nature. No postural, diurnal, or seasonal variation. No aggravating or relieving factors were found. Coming to dyspnea, dyspnea was present on exertion for the last 2 years, insidious in onset, persistent. Progressive, breathless and walking for 100 meters in the last 6 months as we graded through the MMRC grading, grade showed from grade 1 to 3. No postural or diurnal or seasonal variation was seen, no aggravating or relieving factors, no paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea or orthopnea. There was no history found of hemoptysis, wheezing, chest pain, fever, loss of appetite, weight, recurrent cold, joint pains, skin rashes, visual disturbances, or palpitations. Coming to the past medical history, patient was taking inhalers in the form of inhaled corticosteroids and long-acting beta-2 agonists since the last 4 years and had no relief in symptoms. There was no history of tuberculosis, COVID, diabetes mellitus, hypertension, or other medical conditions. Personal history, she was a non-smoker, non-alcoholic, married and had 3 children. Obstetric and gynecological history was not significant. She was a homemaker and sometimes assisted in farming. She had a significant history of biofuel exposure for the last 25 years in the form of chulha smoke. She had farm animals at home. She had a normal sleep, appetite, bowel and bladder habits. Family history, no history of similar illnesses or any other significant illness in the form of family members. Socioeconomic status, she lived in Pakka house, had studied till 10th standard, vegetarian by diet, lower middle class and no specific hobbies. Coming to the general physical examination, patient was conscious, cooperative and well oriented to time, place and person. BMI 20.2 kg per meter square. Vitals, patient presented to us and she had a pulse rate of 100 per minute, regular normal volume character with no vessel wall thickening. She had a respiratory rate of 24 per minute, blood pressure 110 by 70 millimeters of mercury recorded in the right arm in the supine position. Temperature 98 degrees Fahrenheit recorded at axilla. Saturation as recorded 88% on room air at rest. Head to toe examination, hair is normal in color and texture. Eyes, sclera normal, conjunctiva pink and moist. No ptosis or meiosis. Nose, nasal mucosa pink, moist and healthy. No septal deviation or perforation. Oral cavity, oral hygiene was good. Dentation present. No ulcers, postnasal drip or enlarged tonsils were visualized. Coming to the general physical examination and moving forward, we have pallor was absent, icterus was absent, importantly clubbing was present, cyanosis absent, lymphadenopathy absent, edema absent, and neck veins were normal. Inspection, respiratory system examination, chest symmetrical and bilateral equal chest movements, trachea was found to be central, no scars, sinuses and dilated veins were seen, use of accessory muscles of respiration was present. Palpation, inspectory findings were confirmed. Percussion, bilateral resonant note was found. On auscultation, we found bilateral vesicular breath sounds and importantly fine end inspiratory velcro crepitations were present in all areas of the chest. Other system examinations, cardiovascular system, the S1 and S2 normal, no murmur. Neurological examination was within normal limits, and GIT, there was no organomegaly bowel sound present. Now I'd like to invite Dr. Ambika Sharma ma'am, Assistant Professor, Department of Respiratory Medicine, to discuss the case further.
Okay, thank you very much, Rajshri, and thank you, sir, for helping us with the technical support of our laptop working in both way on the screen and on this for us also. So, to quickly sum up this case, so she is a 40-year-old female, non-smoker, presented with dry cough 4 years, dyspnea on exertion, persistent progressive 2 years. She do give the history of exposure to biomass fuel, and she has some farm animals at home, not exactly at home. They have a separate area for keeping the farm nearby only. So on examination, she was in apparent respiratory distress as she was using the accessory muscles of respiration. Tachypnea was present, clubbing was present, and on chest auscultation, what we found was bilateral and inspiratory velcro crackles. Her saturation was 88%, so she was in respiratory failure when she visited to us. And now the session is open for the differential diagnosis. So what do you think it is? It can be? Any of the postgraduate student want to give a lead? What do you think? What is this case? If you want to see the last slide again, quickly 1 or 2 differentials we can get. From medicine department or respiratory department, want to give any differentials? Yes. Interstitial lung disease, yes. A dry cough and breathlessness. Any other differentials we can keep in this case? Okay. So at the first instance, we kept a chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, interstitial lung disease, bronchiectasis, and I will be detailing about why we kept it. Pulmonary artery hypertension, cardiac cause, only because the patient had a chronic cough, and chronic cough should be taken care in the form of, is it there any rhinosinusitis or gastroesophageal reflux disease also. So why we kept a chronic obstructive, as the gold guideline for the COPD says that a patient who is more than 35-year-old, has a chronic illness, has persistent cough and persistent progressive exertional dyspnea. She has the exposure to noxious stimuli and she was in respiratory. So these were all points in favor. What went against, although she was non-smoker, we have one insult already there, but dry cough, usually the patients of COPD have some amount of sputum production. There was no wheeze or rhonchi, and patient was not relieved in the symptoms with the use of inhalers. So somebody said about interstitial lung disease. Yes, there are lots of points in favor of that. Again, chronic illness, dry cough, and persistent progressive exertional dyspnea, environmental exposure, history of farm animals, agriculture work, and biomass fuels, which it can predispose to some kind of ILD. Clubbing was present, again seen in some kind of ILDs. Bilateral velcro crackles on chest auscultation is found in patients with interstitial lung disease, and patient was in respiratory. We also kept a differential of bronchiectasis. Reason was chronic history, dyspnea, persistent progressive, crackle on the chest auscultation. Point against was that we didn't find any significant, so against was that there was no history of any tuberculosis or past infection which can lead to the cause for the bronchiectasis, and there were no copious sputum, although we know there is one entity called bronchiectasis sicca where there is no sputum production, but then it is presented with hemoptysis. There was no hemoptysis in this patient. So we also kept some non-pulmonary causes like cardiac causes, because the patient has a complaint of persistent progressive dyspnea. So we were thinking of, is it some kind of ischemic heart disease, angina, or valvular heart disease, but there were no complaints of chest pain, palpitation, syncope, orthopnea, paroxysm, noxious. On an examination also, we didn't find any murmur. So, how should we proceed for this case? We have a history. We did a differential diagnosis. Which investigation you'd like to do in this case? Anybody from the postgraduate student want to say? Chest X-ray, very good. We needed to confirm our diagnosis from there. Yes. Any other? Okay, well, let's see first X-ray, then we can go for it. So we did a basic investigation. Her hemoglobin was 11.2 gram per DL. WBC was 7,000. Eosinophil were 3%. Platelet, liver function test, renal function, random blood sugar, HIV, all were, HIV was non-reactive and the other labs were within normal limits. We did try to induce sputum for AFB and CB0 for this patient and it was negative. So because the patient presented with SpO2 of 88%, we did a arterial blood analysis and it showed pH of 7.38, PaCO2 of 36, PaO2 of 60 mm of mercury, bicarb of 27 mm of mercury and saturation 87%. It was done on the room air. Anybody want to interpret this one for the PG students? So what does it mean? So this is a normal acid-base balance with type 1 respiratory failure. As PaO2 is less than 80, it is in the mild hypoxemia category. We also did, because the patient has chronic illness and we were keeping in the mind that it can be chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and a spirometry was done for this patient. Anybody from the resident want to read this spirometry? So as you can see the graph, there is quick start, sharp rise and quick fall, and the loop is complete. So this was an acceptable loop, and what the loop suggests that we are probably dealing with the interstitial lung disease. Let's see the values. The ratio of FEV1 upon FVC was normal. FVC was decreased to 58% of the predicted, and FEV1 was also low. So this suggestive of moderate impairment of lung function and suggestion of restriction can be confirmed with total lung capacity. We further investigated this patient while doing a 6-minute walk test, and we found that patient started desaturating in 3-minute time only, and she was not able to walk further. So there was a drop of more than 4% of SpO2. Her ECG was normal, and 2D echo revealed mild TR, type 1 diastolic dysfunction. No pulmonary artery hypertension or left ventricular ejection fraction was 60%. So this is the radiology of chest. Is normal, abnormal? Anybody from the PG student? What do you think? Abnormal? Okay, abnormal. So chest, actually, this is actually the scout image, which shows the bilateral reticulonodular opacities in upper and mid zones, and there is a bit of cardiomegaly. And the trachea also looks toward the right side, right lung look little smaller than the left. So what else the different? We have done our basic investigation, CBC, LFT, RFT, chest X-ray, 2D echo. What do you think what we are dealing with? Anybody from the audience want to say? Yes?
There is exposure to animals, we can see both hypersensitivity to malaria.
Yes, that is a kind of interstitial lung disease you mean to say. Any other? Yes, we are keeping a differential of interstitial lung disease, and we have nearly ruled out most of them. So what is your next choice of, next investigation of choice when you are thinking about something called interstitial lung disease? Do you want to investigate this patient further? And what will be your first choice? HRCT, very good. So high resolution computed tomography of chest is needed. And to read this, I would like to invite Dr. Ramesh Goswami sir, Assistant Professor in Department of Radio Diagnosis, to elaborate the HRCT findings.
Thank you, Dr. Ambika ma'am. Good afternoon, respected teachers, seniors, and my dear colleague. HRCT chest inspected scan at upper thoracic level, axial view are showing. Multiple reticular opacities in the periphery of lung in subpleural location with traction bronchiectasis and microscopic honeycombing in subpleural location. Small pneumatocysts seen in right upper lobe. Same patient at mid thoracic level. Similar findings are appreciated like traction bronchiectasis, septal thickening, and microscopic honeycombing, and minimal GGS small ground glass nodules in centrilobar ground glass nodules. Similar finding is seen at lower thoracic level. Traction bronchiectasis basal segment of right lower lobe and left lower lobe with minimal GGS centrilobar nodules On expiratory scan, there is no area of air trapping or mosaic adhesion seen. Traction bronchiectasis is very good seen in this section. On coronal sagittal image, there is slight upper lobe predominance, otherwise equally seen in basal segment also. On prone scan, there is no gravitation distribution of GGH is seen. MIP reconstruction, there is few ill-defined small nodules of centrilobular ground glass edginess are seen in the bilateral lower lobes. In mediastinal window, there is no significant lymphadenopathy seen, but few subcentimetric size to mild enlarged lymph nodes are seen in mediastinum without obvious area of calcification. Axial CT video run. Multiple reticular nodal reticular thickening, interseptal thickening with subpleural honeycombing and traction bronchiectasis, small pneumatocyl, minimal GGH, and centrilobular nodules. There is no organomegaly seen in visualized upper abdomen. So, in this patient, positive findings are interintervallar septal thickening, along with minimal ground glass edginess, traction bronchiectasis, subpleural honeycombing, showing bilateral upper and lower lobe predominance with suggestive of interstitial lung disease, along with few pneumatocysts in right upper and right lower lobe, and few ill-defined centrilobular ground glass nodules in bilateral lower lobes, suggestive bronchiolitis, few subcentimetric size to mild enlarged mediastinal lymph nodes are seen, and no organomegaly is seen. So, on the basis of HRCT findings, differentials were kept: UIP, NSIP, chronic or fibrotic hypersensitive pneumonitis, CTD-related ILD, sarcoidosis, COVID-related ILD, DIP or RBILD, or chronic eosinophilic pneumonia. So, we exclude one by one. UIP pattern points in favor honeycombing the specific sign of UIP. Then reticulation, traction bronchiectasis, and subpleural predominance. These findings are present in our case, but against our diffuse involvement is UIP pattern mostly showing the apicobasal gradient with predominantly involving bilateral lower lobes, and GGH is also against the UIP pattern. NSIP, GGH, interseptal thickening and diffuse distribution is favoring the NSIP. But subpleural involvement is against the NSIP, as NSIP is showing subpleural sparing is typical. Honeycombing is also against the NSIP. Chronic fibrotic hypersensitive pneumonitis, reticulation, traction bronchiectasis, GGH, exposure to farm-related organic dust and farm animal at home. These are the positive favoring points. But points against are that there is no mosaic attenuation, no air trapping on expiratory scan, no allergy history or sensitivity history. CT-related ILD, it may present as UIP pattern or NSIP pattern as seen in RA-related ILD. There is anterior segment right upper lobe honeycombing is specific feature. CTD is more common in the females and younger age group. Points against are no specific symptom like pain or body ache are there. COVID-related pneumonia, GGH, septal thickening, and traction bronchiectasis. But points against are honeycombing, no history of COVID-related pneumonia. Chronic eosinophilic pneumonia, there is GGH, pulmonary nodules, reticulation, predominantly seen in advanced stages of disease. But there is no typical non-segmental distribution of consolidation in peripheral predominance, no eosinophilia. Sarcoidosis, interstitial septal thickening is seen with traction bronchiectasis, which can be seen in sarcoidosis, but perilymphatic nodular distribution, which were not present in this. Diffuse involvement of disease is sarcoidosis predominantly in all the bilateral upper lobes. No obvious lymphadenopathy, as lymphadenopathy is characteristic sign of sarcoidosis. 75% cases present with only lymphadenopathy. There is no hepatosplenomegaly in this case. RBILD, ground glass opacities with upper lobe predominance, poorly differentiated central lobe nodules. These are present in our case. Fibrosis may be seen in late stage of the disease with traction bronchiectasis, maybe. But points against are no history of smoking, honeycombing, and traction bronchiectasis. So in our case, positive finding the intrainterval receptor thickening with minimal GGS, traction bronchiectasis, subpleural honeycombing, showing the bilateral upper and lower lobe predominance, along with few ill-defined centrilobular ground glass nodules in bilateral lower lobe and few subcentimetric size to margin large lymph node. So probably radiological diagnosis is typical UIP pattern with bronchiolitis. Now I invite Dr. Ambika for further discussion.
Thank you very much, sir. So for one thing is sure that we are dealing with the interstitial lung disease here. And when we talk about interstitial lung disease, we have these many. So anybody of you can guess what it is. One of the audience said that it can be hypersensitivity pneumonitis, ma'am. There is exposure to farmer's lung, we know. Yes. Any other DD, or are you how strongly we can see? Is that the classical pattern what is seen in the CT? It's looked like in what we see in hypersensitivity pneumonitis. Probably we will not agree, as radiologists also mentioned about this, that the DDs are many in this case. So there are more than 200 types of ILD, and which one is this? We try our all best to find out. And from this complicated picture we try to make it simplified in 5 major groups. ILD of known cause and unknown cause. Among known cause, it is a CTD ILD, whether it is the rheumatoid arthritis, SLE, or any other or autoimmune disorder. Then we have another group which is exposure-related ILDs, in which come the hypersensitivity pneumonitis, which per se is a very big group. And many of time whenever we are talking about hypersensitivity, we always say in our lectures that we need to be Sherlock Holmes to find the cause for the hypersensitivity pneumonitis, whether it is the farmer's lung, whether it is the dampness in the house, whether patient is going for sauna bath, or the list is again big. One should also take a detailed history about the occupational diseases. Like we know asbestosis, silicosis, very prevalent in Rajasthan, and coal workers pneumoconiosis and hard metal exposure. They all can lead to interstitial lung disease, which was not there in this case. In this patient's medication history, we know some of the chemotherapeutic drugs, some of the rheumatoid arthritis drugs, and most commonly the urinary tract infection, for which we use the first choice, which is nitrofurantoin. It can cause the interstitial lung disease. And not to forget, in a female patient, we are in the age of 40. Has she got any history of breast cancer? Has received any radiation history or something? So we need to rule out all these exposures. Then we have another group, which is a chronic granulomatous group, and in which sarcoidosis comes, and which has a very typical pattern, and it's a common ILD. So one need to rule out about that. And if we fail to find out any cause, then we need to work upon which group of idiopathic disease we are talking about, because many of them present very separately and has been managed in different way. We should also not forget about post-viral fibrosis, which we encountered after COVID, and familial ILD, just the family members had the ILD. So in this particular case, in the first instance, what I read that there was no medication history, no radiation exposure, LCH, Langerhans, diffuse alveolar, they have very typical pattern on CT, which was not seen in this case. So we are ruling out that occupation. We didn't find any significant injury, no post-viral and familial ILD. I'm also cutting about acute interstitial pneumonitis here because and COP, because they present quite acutely, and weeks to like days to weeks they have presentation. Now RBILD and DIP are the diseases which are the predominantly happening in the smokers. So we are at the first instance not keeping this also at our differentials. So how to proceed further? We have got CT scan, and we have still not sure which one is this, and it is important to find out what cause it is. Anybody want to guess what it is, what it can be, or anyone feels that this is quite sure this is this disease of ILD? Then you can help me in that. No, we are not sure about this, and we need an investigation to rule out, as I mentioned, that we need to rule out all possible causes. A connected tissue profile was done, which was negative. We also wanted to find anything in support of sarcoidosis. We did a serum ACE, which was within normal. There was no hypercalcemia, no hypercalciuria. Mount Tooth was 7 into 8 mm, and we also did a hypersensitivity pneumonitis panel, which is IgG for many of the organic materials, and it was also negative. So we have come in the situation where we have ruled out merely rule out. This patient also visited to the rheumatologist to confirm if anything is there, because we always take it in multidisciplinary discussion, and rheumatologists are the key persons to tell us that this picture of ILD and this serology is not matching with the CTD. You can go ahead and find the other causes. So exposure-related sarcoidosis, nothing coming in the favor of this. What we are left with is some kind of idiopathic thing or something others which we are not able to see here. So what we should do now, we have nearly exhausted all the investigation in this particular cases. We have done CTD profile and everything. So what we should do now? What do you think? We don't have a definite diagnosis at the moment. Anybody want to give what one should do in all these cases where we cannot make a ILD diagnosis on the basis of clinical and radiological characteristic? Anything we should move ahead with? Biopsy. Okay, so guideline also says that in all these cases, one should go for the invasive procedures. And when we talk about invasive procedures, we have few choices. Should we go directly for the surgical lung biopsy, or we should do a transbronchial lung biopsy? And there is one new kit in the block, which is transbronchial cryobiopsy. So which one is the ideal procedure? So although this procedure has its own advantages and disadvantages, whether transbronchial lung biopsy is relatively safe, it's been doing since long, it's an outpatient procedure, but the pieces are really small and crushed artifact is seen in these biopsies. And making the patient ready for the open lung biopsy, surgical lung biopsy is really difficult. Although if patient gets ready, this is the gold standard. We get large pieces from the multiple loads, but there is again the risk of getting the patients in acute exacerbation, prolonged air leak, anesthesia-related side effect. So we have come up with the new, I think 2016 or 17, transbronchial cryobiopsy was started in world, and it has the benefit of getting large pieces and then TBLB, and there's no crush artifact. Again, it has the same complication what other biopsy procedure will be having, like hemorrhage and pneumothorax. So after a detailed counseling with the patient, taking the consent, checking for whether it is fit to do for this biopsy, we did the transbronchial cryobiopsy with 1.1 mm cryoprobe, and a biopsy was taken from the right middle lobe under fluoroscopic guidance. There are three pictures. The most left one shows the bronchoscopic picture where the cryoprobe is in the segment, and you can see the amount of bleeding it is happening. This procedure do come with the bleeding risk, but luckily in this case we were able to manage with the supportive treatment like installation of adrenaline and course line. We were able to manage the bleeding. The other picture is about the fluoroscope, where we can see our ultra thin bronchoscope, the black part, and this is the cryoprobe, which is 1.1 mm, really small one, and we have kind of put a ring to localize ourselves. So this was a fluoroscopic image, and this is the size of piece what we get when we do a cryobiopsy. It is larger than the TBLB. And I also want to mention here that this is the first case we did at IRD SMS, the transbronchial cryobiopsy, in a case of interstitial lung disease. So to read the pathological findings, I would like to invite Dr. Sakshi Agarwal, Senior Resident in the Department of Pathology. Dr. Sakshi.
Thank you, ma'am. And good afternoon, teachers, seniors, juniors, and colleagues. So the biopsy was first sent to a private lab for histopathology, from where it was received in our department for a review report. The gross of the specimen consisted of fragments of gray white soft tissue pieces, collectively measuring 0.3 centimeter. The microscopy was concluded as a non-specific lesion with no evidence of dysplasia or malignancy by the lab. When we reviewed the microscopy, we found out that there were fragments of bronchial mucosal lined tissue with submucosal edema. There was thickening of interstitial space by edema, fibroblastic proliferation, and collagen deposition, along with infiltration by chronic inflammatory cells. Also, we found out that there was desquamation of cells lining the terminal bronchiole with increased mucus production at places. There was accumulation of alveolar macrophages within respiratory bronchiole and neighboring alveoli. Again, there was no evidence of granuloma, fungi, dysplasia, or malignancy. Here in this section, we can see that on the upper left, in the upper left field, the tissue is showing a lot of carbon pigment deposition along with interstitial fibrosis and edema. On the right lower side of the field, we can see a terminal respiratory bronchiole. The higher magnification view of this terminal bronchiole shows that it is lined by columnar epithelium, which we can see it is discontinuous at places, suggesting desquamation. Also, the submucosal tissue is showing infiltration by mild chronic inflammatory infiltrate. In this section, we can see that on the left side of the field, the alveoli are filled with alveolar macrophages. On the right side, these alveoli are distorted. And in the all over field, we can see the infiltration by chronic inflammatory cells, fibroblasts, and collagen. This field shows that there is complete obliteration of alveoli by interstitial fibrosis, collagen deposition, and carbon pigment deposition in the lung parenchyma. Again, we can see a magnified picture of the desquamated alveolar macrophages and columnar epithelial cells lying in a proteinaceous mucus background. So based on these histopathological findings, we put up together these following differentials. First one was respiratory bronchiolitis associated ILD, desquamative interstitial pneumonia, non-specific interstitial pneumonia, usual interstitial pneumonia, hypersensitivity pneumonitis, and lymphocytic infiltration pneumonia. So RBILD, the points that went into the favor of diagnosis of RBILD was that it is histologically characterized by submucosal inflammation of respiratory bronchioles, along with fibrous thickening of the wall, mucostasis, and there are a lot of pigment macrophages within respiratory bronchioles. Then we considered desquamative interstitial pneumonia, but the points that went against against DIP was that there are diffuse and massive accumulation of intraalveolar pigmented macrophages in DIP, along with lower degree of interstitial fibrosis and inflammation. Then NSIP was also ruled out, as microscopically we can divide NSIP into cellular or fibrotic NSIP. It is characterized by inflammatory changes which can be patchy or diffuse, and there is no architectural derangement of the alveoli. In our case, we found out there was derangement of the alveoli. Then usual interstitial pneumonia was considered, but again, the points that went against the diagnosis of UIP was that it is associated with classical honeycombing or marked architectural distortion of alveoli, along with wide variation in nature and degree of inflammatory cell infiltrate. Then hypersensitivity pneumonitis was considered, but since clinical and radiology was not in favor of hypersensitivity, and also in the microscopy, we did not find any granulomas or eosinophilic cell infiltrate. So this was also ruled out. Then lymphocytic infiltration pneumonia was considered, but again that microscopy did not show any lymphoid follicles or histiocytes or plasma cells. Also, it is associated with other autoimmune diseases. So considering all the clinical, radiological and histopathological features, we arrived at the diagnosis of respiratory bronchiolitis associated with interstitial lung disease, that is RBILD. And for further discussion, I would like to call upon Ambika ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sakshi. So we have a diagnosis now, and this diagnosis came only after joining all pieces of jigsaw puzzle. That means all our evidences coming from different departments. And, you know, we didn't stop here. We again called to pathology and radiology. Are we really dealing with RBILD? And yes, it was confirmed after multidisciplinary discussion that this patient has a respiratory bronchiolitis, and the exposure here was the biomass fuel chula, which casually we talk and we take this, हाँ चूल्हे पे काम किया, COPD हो सकता है. And this patient has a very typical history that she used to work for 6 hours per day in a poorly ventilated kitchen for last 25 years. She used to cook food daily for her joint family of 20 members. So there was the exposure history which led to the respiratory bronchiolitis associated ILD, and it was confirmed as histopathological finding. So this was the table which I was mentioning. Here we are. The thing which we thought this is a predominantly smokers disease, we left it here. And we left it very early in our first impression, but this came out to be this. And we, little bit about the disease. This is a rare form of interstitial lung disease, and it is predominantly found in smokers. That's why it is characterized in the category of smoking related ILD, and it comes in one of the idiopathic interstitial pneumonia. And we did review the literature to find if there are the case reports or detailed literature on non-smokers, and we were able to find only handful of literature where it has been also detailed about that most of their patients were had a second hand smoking. That means they were not smoking, any of the family member was smoking. In one research they mentioned about diesel fume, fiberglass, second hand smoke, again solder flux fumes, that are the metal processing fumes, which can cause respiratory bronchiolitis, associated interstitial lung disease. We did encounter a case which was same like us, a 35-year-old female non-smoker and had a biomass fuel exposure. Here the transbronchial lung biopsy was done for her, which revealed the RBILD. And other research which is done by Mehta et al., they found that metal dust fume is also responsible for this, and they did a lung biopsy in that case. 2017 was the latest research what I found in 33-year-old male who was vaping for last 3 years, and it was the e-cigarette which was responsible for the RBILD, and that was confirmed from the VAD surgical lung biopsy. So coming to the epidemiology, it is uncommon, and in a study from the Greece, the incidence of RBILD was estimated to be 0.04 per 1 lakh population. And in another review of 168 lung biopsy performed for suspicion of idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, they were thinking that this is a UIP pattern, this is IPF, but it turned out to be 10 of the patients were having RBILD. So these are the data from our Indian registries. We have two important data, ILD India Registry and Epidemiology of ILD India, which has been published from PGI Chandigarh. And what they have found that in their cohort of 1,000 and 3,000 patients, the prevalence was only 0.2 to 0.3. So the pathogenesis of RBILD in non-smoker is not fully understood. Smoke from the biomass, which contains a complex mixture of particulate matter and toxic gases, can trigger a similar inflammatory response as seen in smokers. And why only some people get RBILD remains unclear, suggesting potential genetic or immunological predisposition. So if you see the book picture of RBILD, most of our patients present in this form. They have a soft ground glass nodules, centrilobular nodules, and if they are the current smoker, we will not go for the biopsy in that patient, and we will ask him to stop smoking and follow up of the patient. But our patient was quite advanced with the fibrotic presentation of RBILD. So what the literature say, how should we manage? There is only one management, just avoid the exposure, stop smoking, and that's it. If the patient come with this CT, he will be fine with the next 2 to 3 months with the normal CT. But yes, if the patient comes that time and is in respiratory failure, we need to give oxygen therapy, pulmonary rehabilitation, vaccination to prevent further infections. About the glucocorticoid data, the data are really scanty. Data supporting its efficacy are conflicting. Some are positive, some are negative studies, but it is suggested for patients who have advanced progressive RBILD despite smoking cessation, so one should try the glucocorticoid therapy. So lung transplantation has not been reported for RBILD till date. And talking about the prognosis of this disease has a good prognosis, good survival rate. 5-year survival is more than 75%, and which is very important that these patients come with devastating feeling of breathlessness, and we give them positive hope that you have got a good ILD at least. So what we did in our patient, we asked her to avoid the exposure, and the patient and the relatives were so very impressed to get the cause, because they were looking for the cause in the closer. Why my patient is getting deteriorated and bad day by day, and they stopped cooking food on chula. They have LPG now. They have renovated the kitchen completely, and she was also advised for the deep breathing exercises, nutritional support, exercise training was advised to her. We did try a short course of corticosteroid in the dose of 0.5 mg per kg, and we are gradually tapering up this, and it was given for 30 mg for 1 month, 20 mg for next month, and presentation on 10 mg. And although there is no literature or no data which says that antifibrotics are to be given in RBILD, because seeing the amount of traction bronchiectasis and diffuse fibrosis. We did after the proper counseling and shared this decision with the patient. We did try nintedanib antifibrotic with 150 mg twice a day. We want to take this on follow up. The steroid and antifibrotic that we have to continue it or we need to stop it and then she got the supportive treatment to for further management. So the patient is showing good improvement over last 3 years. This is quite a recent case. We need to follow her more further. MMRC dyspnea has improved from grade 3 to grade 2. She does not require oxygen and her room air saturation is 94 at rest at the moment. And 6-minute walk test to our surprise had improved drastically. Earlier she was not able to walk for 100 meters. Now she is walking 300 meters and her spirometry, although not has shown a very drastic improvement, but FVC has improved from 58 to 63%. So this is her follow-up X-ray, which we cannot appreciate much of the improvement on the radiology part. Probably we will be doing on 6 months or a year CT scan to come for how it goes like. So the take-home message from this is that detailed history taking has a vital role, and this case emphasizes on significant role of transbronchial cryomyopathy in undiagnosed interstitial lung disease case, and MDD, that is multidisciplinary discussion, is the key to reach the diagnosis. With this, I thank you for your patience listening.
One thing I want to highlight, one thing is how to we came to diagnosis is, I want to thank to the pathology department, Dr. Ajay Verma madam, because, when I did the 3 attempt of the cryo lung transbronchial biopsy, I sent to the biopsy to the private sector. It was came negative, no tissues found, and everything is a big. The tissue was blooded with the black. I have seen this slide also, but I shocked that I invited the whole block and then sent to the SMS Medical College, and I talked to Ajay Verma madam the full history of other resident mentioned into that, and then came the RBILD and again shocked. So why ILD? Because the patient is a female, no history of the smoking. I talked to the madam, and then madam said, just find out to look at the the history for the smoking, and we sit to the patient with the 30 minutes. And then as मैंने पूछा भाई, I went to the ICU also because the patient developed the pneumothorax, and this the heterogenic pneumothorax can be controlled very well after the procedure. And then the patient was happy, and then what happened, मैंने बोला उनसे कि आप खाना घर में कितने लोग हैं, तो बोले मेरे घर में 30 लोग और मैं 20-25 साल से खाना बना रही हूँ, सुबह शाम दोपहर. So that the history came. So this is the clinching point for the coming of the bringer. So I go, all our department go to this, and finally came. This is a rare disease, and the patient is happy. And I thanks to all of pathology, radiology department, or medicine department, entire SMS. I'm proud to be the part of the SMS. Thank you very much for giving us time.
So this was an excellent case, even for physicians, because it highlights the importance. Once you make a diagnosis of ILD, then there is some grimness. But then if you know the type of ILD and know the prognosis, then it does have a hope for the patient. With this, we end this session, and I now invite Monica Jain ma'am to make a special announcement.
So, good afternoon, everybody. And I can see we all are feeling cold, right? Because the auditorium is particularly cold. ACs are off now. So now to add upon another note from my side is Rajasthan Medical Journal is being published by our institution, and it is in middle of a crisis because we are not having any indexing. So what we have done is we have created a website of it recently with the efforts of Dr. Kapil Gupta, Dr. Shivankan, Satish ji from IT section, Divya ji, and DOIT. With the help of DOIT, we are able to create RMJ website, and for this I will invite Dr. Shivankan and Satish ji to please kindly make us apprise about how it works and how you have to submit your article online as we do it for other journals. So my humble submission is please, even if it is not indexed, try to publish some of the things which you can with your residents, because until unless the things are published, we will not be able to put it on in some kind of a good indexing, and we need it badly. And in our institution, as CPC is our strength, Similarly, on the same ground, I would like to say, if we rate an institution, we also look into what it is publishing. So if you have our own journal, I'll request all of you, the residents also, to include the clinical puzzle, case reports, any unusual cases, and research article. We'll be needing all of them, and we'll be needing the cooperation of each one of you. Before I put my final vote of thanks, I will request Shivankan to please apprise us about this RMJ online website. Please keep the patient hearing because it is really very important for our institution. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Team RMJ and Department of IT has worked very hard on this. And this is the first time that we have come up with a journal management platform of our very own. So, first I'll just take you to the website. I believe ma'am has shared with you the link also. So this is the website, the newer version of the website. We were already having a website. So we have just tweaked that a bit, and this is a new website, rmj.rajasthan.gov.in, and presently we are having the current issue here. This is a trial version, and if you'll just go to this website and click on instruction to the authors, we have tried to reframe and streamline this. The online manuscript submission process is now through SSO ID. So the general management platform, we have created one, Department of IT, all thanks to the department. I'll be going through that process. There is no submission fees, and we have tried to make it as simple as possible. We can actually go and download these templates from this website. This is the copyright transfer form. Before submitting, you can take a printout and sign this, and then keep a scanned copy ready. And then we are having this annexure 2, which is containing the templates for various types of articles. So what we have done, we have tried to make it easy for the authors to submit. जैसा कि मैं यहाँ पे डाउनलोड करके बता रहा हूँ आपको. I'll just download the PDF version. Yeah, हो गया. Okay. So this is an editable file. वर्ड डॉक्यूमेंट में, PDF डॉक्यूमेंट में है. इसके अंदर जो भी आप आर्टिकल क्रिएट करते हैं, तो जो फाइनल शेप में सबमिट करना होता है, तो उसके अंदर सब चीजें हैं, जैसे ऑथर नेम कैसे आना है, टाइटल किस फॉन्ट में आना है, तो ऑलरेडी बिल्ट इन है. You just have to copy paste and it will be ready. There are certain guidelines. I'll read them out very quickly. तो एक सेट फॉर्मेट है जो कि इंटरनेशनली स्टैंडर्डाइज्ड है. कैसे करने हैं, कब एब्रीविएशन आने हैं, कब एक्नॉलेजमेंट आना है, क्या ऑथर के कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशंस कैसे आने हैं. तो देयर इज अ सेट टेम्पलेट फॉर ऑल द काइंड्स ऑफ लेटर्स, इवन लेटर टू एडिटर और व्हाटएवर वी आर लुकिंग एट. तो ये सारे टेम्पलेट्स हैं, इनको डाउनलोड करके देन वी कैन प्रिपेयर आवर आर्टिकल अकॉर्डिंगली. और जब हम इंस्ट्रक्शंस टू ऑथर्स पढ़ते हैं, तो इसमें देखते हैं कि ये सारी चीजें लिखी रखी हैं, कैसे कैसे प्रिपेयर करके उसी में ऐड करके मैक्सिमम वर्ड लिमिट कितनी है, एब्स्ट्रैक्ट में कितना है, कैसे अल्फाबेटिकल ऑर्डर में आपको कीवर्ड्स लिखने हैं, सो दैट आर आर्टिकल्स आर एट पार विद द इंटरनेशनल लेवल जर्नल्स. रेफरेंसेस करने. सो दिस वाज the newer guidelines. Now I'll just go through the SSO login part. As you all know कि हम लोग SSO से कर रहे हैं सारी चीजें. So एक ऐप डेवलप किया है. Sthan.gov.in. इनके लाइन पे खुल जाएगा ऐसे. लॉगिन कर लो इसमें। तो हम सबके पास में अपनी SSO ID है, तो सिटीजन ऐप बनाया है। तो जैसे मैं यहाँ पे बस आई जस्ट टेक 2 more minutes। आपने सबमिट किए होंगे वॉल्टर क्लूवर की जर्नल्स में, तो उनका जर्नल मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम सॉफ्टवेयर है, तो वैसा ही पोर्टल क्रिएट करने की कोशिश करिए। All thanks to our principal sir and additional principal ma'am. एक सेकंड सतीश जी, आप लॉगिन कर देंगे? चाहिए 1 मिनट में आप लॉगिन कर देंगे। आ गया। ये क्या हो रहा है? ओके, आप देख रहे हैं जैसे SSO ID पे लॉगिन करेंगे तो सिटीजन ऐप पे जाना है आपको। सिटीजन ऐप पे जाएंगे तो फिर एक यहाँ पे आपको ये ऐप दिखाई देगा, द राजस्थान मेडिकल जर्नल। तो जैसे राजकाज का जैसे ऐप है, वैसे ही RMJ का ये ऐप डेवलप किया है इन्होंने। एंड आप एक बार क्लिक करेंगे तो एज एन ऑथर आप एडमिन है, तो ये तो ऑथर भी बन सकते हैं। तो ऑथर बन के यहाँ पे मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट मैनेजमेंट में जाइए, न्यू मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट। तो इसके अंदर मैं फिल कर देता हूँ। आप ये देखिए, आप आई गेस यू आर एबल टू से दिस। तो आपने सबमिट करे होंगे सारी इंटरनेशनल जर्नल्स में, तो उनके अपने ऐसा क्राइटेरिया। तो बहुत बहुत सिंपल सा बनाया है कि यहाँ पे जैसे आपको अपना पूरा नाम डालना है, तो आई एम पुटिंग एनी नेम, एनी एफिलिएशन, कोई भी। आई एम जस्ट गोइंग थ्रू दिस वेरी क्विकली बिकॉज ऑल ऑफ यू हैव एन आइडिया कि कहाँ पे करना है। कोड, मोबाइल नंबर पूछेगा, ईमेल आईडी पूछेगा। सो मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट टाइप ओरिजिनल रिसर्च है। टाइटल यहाँ पे दे सकते हैं, कीवर्ड्स यहाँ पे कॉमा के साथ में दे सकते हैं। आप देखेंगे बिल्कुल मिनिमम चीजें पूछी हैं। एब्स्ट्रैक्ट 250 वर्ड्स का डालना है, और जो एनेक्स्टर्स वहां से जो डाउनलोड किए थे हमने, उन्हीं को ही हम अपलोड कर सकते हैं यहाँ पे। So I'll just I can upload any of the files from So जैसे मैंने यहाँ पे अपलोड किया, इसमें PDF फाइल है, इसमें ब्लाइंडेड मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट फाइल है, और एक PDF फाइल अपलोड करनी है। सो बेसिकली कोई PDF फाइल होती तो आई वुड हैव अपलोडेड दैट। तो यहाँ पे ऑथर ऑर्डर है, जैसे ये फर्स्ट ऑथर है, आई कैन ऐड एन ऑथर, एनी नेम, एफिलिएशन, ईमेल आईडी। ऑथर ऑर्डर में चेंज कर सकता हूँ, फर्स्ट सेकंड कर सकता हूँ। अब इसको फर्स्ट करना चाहता हूँ तो फर्स्ट कर सकता हूँ। इसको सेकंड करना चाहता हूँ तो इसको सेकंड कर सकता हूँ. देन आई कंफर्म, देन आई एग्री एंड देन आई विल सबमिट दिस. तो सबमिट होने के बाद में मेरे आउटबॉक्स में एक मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट पड़ी होगी, जैसे कि मैं डाउनलोड करके बताता हूँ. अगर इफ आई डाउनलोड दिस जस्ट annexure 1, तो कॉपीराइट फॉर्म भी मैंने अपलोड कर दिया. सो इट हार्डली टुक मी 2 minutes and I will submit this. और सबमिट होने के बाद में जब अपने उसमें जाऊंगा तो मेरे आउटबॉक्स में ये फाइल्स पड़ी होंगी. तो पहले मैंने एक डमी फाइल सबमिट करी थी. यू कैन व्यू दिस. किसके पास में पड़ी है? एडमिन लेवल पे पड़ी है. फिर देन ऑटोमेटिकली दिस साइकिल विल, you can see it online. You'll get an update of your article, whether it is pending to publish, whether it is rejected, or whether you have been asked to withdraw it. ये सारा इसमें देख सकते हैं. We have tried very hard on this and we invite articles as ma'am has asked. Thank you. Thank you.
So, convener CPC, Dr. Puneet Saxena sir, all the esteemed faculty who is still waiting for my vote of thanks to be given. And I must congratulate the Department of Institute of Respiratory Disease for excellent CPC. I think it was most calm and composed and cool voice of Dr. Ambika which made all the difference. The efforts of Dr. Mahendra Singh Banara, the head of the Department Institute of Respiratory Disease, convener CPC for always finding the tune, because that is most essential. We filter it and then present it to all of you. Pathology has done an excellent job. Without you people, nothing could have been possible because the diagnosis was with you. And the history part is most important. That is, I always emphasize for UG and PG, concrete history is important, because in this case, history then was correlated with the pathological finding. So excellent CPC, please do send it to the college website so that everybody else who have not attended this may have look into this. I thank all who are still sitting behind listening carefully. Thank you very much. You are the most important people in my life, because it is very heartening to see at least few of you. Please inspire other persons also to attend the CPC. Thank you all very much. Thank you.